Okay, so now we're going to look at line 3. We're discussing the dedication of beneficial activity prayer, and we've just completed looking at part A, comprised of lines 1 and 2, and now we move to part B, which starts off with line 3. So as usual, we'll begin by spelling line 3. So we've got sa, kata ka, yata kya, drengbu ke, ra, gata ga, na, a o cha, gigu chi, a gigu I chi, ra bata ba, ra lata la, ba sa la, a o ka, rata tra, shabku tru, ga sa truk, pa ya gigu yi. We spelled it, now we read it. K ga na chi ba lob tru pa yi. The Tibetan translators, probably over 1,000 years ago, have decided to use this shloka form, and then in this particular prayer, we've got a shloka with 9 syllables per line. So ke ga na chi ba lop tru pa yi. The Tibetans love a binomial, a 2-syllable unit. And so that fits very nicely into this format. More on that later. Let's look at the parsing box now and analyze which we've spelled and read, this line 3, which we've spelled and read. So first of all, we have K and Ga in the first box, Sakata Ka Yata Kya Drengbu Ke and Ragata Ga. These are 2 nouns of a series of 4 that are mentioned here in the prayer. So we in English, and they're just birth and aging. So in English, because we're going to have a series of 4, we would probably just have birth, comma, aging, comma, for the first box. Then in the second mini box, we've got na, ao chagigu chi, agigu I chi, na chi. So here we have 2 more nouns, but then the last item we have here is a fused genitive again, put right into the last syllable of the preceding syllable, chi. So chi, that doesn't make a separate syllable, but it's just 1 syllable. So we've got, ke ga na chi, not chi E, which would make another syllable and give us 10 syllables per line, throwing off the meter. They never do that, by the way. Once it's decided that the poet translators are working at 9 syllables per line, they won't deviate from that. I've never seen it once, I don't think, in 30 years of looking at Tibetan. Okay, Kega na chi, na is sickness or illness, and chi is death. And then, then a genitive at the end of a list like this, it could be just affixing something to the last member of the list, which would be chi, which is death here, or to the whole series. So here it's setting up something to modify the entire series, or another way of putting it, it's connecting this entire series by means of that agigui genitive to what's following. So something regarding birth, aging, illness, and death. Those are things which the human condition is shocked by, right? Like in Hamlet, the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to by having a body, being a sentient being. There's problems that occur with our happiness and the way that we relate to things. Sometimes that's things as birth, which can be very painful. Aging, not much fun. Sickness, of course, and death. Okay, anyway, all 4 of those are being linked by the agigui genitive to the next box, you could say. The next binomial, the next 2-syllable unit. So we've got 2, 2, 2 now. A new 2. Rabata ba, ralata la ba sa lab, balab. Okay, balab is actually a noun, And then the sa at the end is a fused instrumental particle. The instrumental usually means by or with, as we saw above, something like that. So then we get by the waves. And then if we go backwards, we can make that agigui genitive of seems to be making sense. By the waves of birth, aging, illness, and death. When we translate a list of terms, we translate them into English in the same order as they occur in Tibetan. So birth, aging, illness, and death. And throughout Buddhist teachings and throughout lots and lots of sutras, going all the way back to the time of the Buddhist teachings, when he's talking about the sufferings in samsara, the conditioned existence, the world of becoming, it's often summarized, all the 1,000 shocks are summarized by the four of birth, aging, illness, and death. Kind of sums it up. Okay, so now we just basically have something, a phrase, right? By the waves of those things. Well, what about them? So let's go forward and look at our last box, which will have the 3 syllables in it. Kega, Nachi, Balab, Trukpayi. So Ao Karata Trashakyu Trugasa Truk Pa Yagigu Trukpayi. Okay, so here, starting backwards, we have the verb trukpa, and then we have another genitive. So when a genitive comes on a verb, something a little bit different happens. As we learn Tibetan grammar, we learn about the 8 cases, for instance. We learn about particles in general, and then particles, their uses can be broken down into 2 big categories in Tibetan. How are they used with nouns? And that would include noun phrases like with this big cat or something like that, the whole thing. How are they used in that kind of way versus how are they used with verbs? So here we have a genitive used with a verb. So genitives in general are always connecting or relating 2 things together, can be 2 words, or concepts, 2 phrases or clauses together. But they're always doing some kind of connecting. So but then when we come to see how they're connecting something with verbs, we have to kind of zoom in with the microscope and look a little closer. And first of all, determine that it is working with the verb, and then what is that doing to the verb? How is that shaping the syntax of the sentence? And what's very, very often happening is we have what's in English is a relative clause, setting up a relative clause. And so when I teach this often, I talk about the stories of Tintin, and Tintin is a little boy that had lots of adventures as a journalist kid all around the world in a series of comics. And he went to Tibet one time. So Tintin in Tibet is the name of one of these books. But I use this as an example when I say Tintin is the boy. That's his name. It's a funny name, but it's just his name, Tintin. Tintin is the boy who went to Tibet. So that part there, who went to Tibet, that's a relative clause, a subordinate clause. It's beneath in power and meaning the main verb, which is went. He went to Tibet. Tintin went to Tibet. That's a sentence. But Tintin is the boy who went to Tibet. So the who went to Tibet gives us a little bit more information about Tintin. Tibetan, in English, we do that with what are called relative pronouns, like who and that. That's the book that I wrote last year, this is the book that I'm reading this year, something like that. And in Tintin is the boy who went to Tibet. So the genitives will play that kind of role in Tibetan, rather than being a pronoun like in English. It's a genitive in Tibetan that does this type of connecting with a verb. So just like went to Tibet is a verb, right? So here we've got this trukpa verb, which means agitated or disturbed or tossed about. And so then we've got, with the genitive, it could be who or which or that. So who or which or that is tossed about by the waves of birth, aging, illness, and death. So we know we're at the end of a line, but not the end of a sentence because we've got this connecting genitive particle. So it's going to connect to something that's found in the next line, which would be line 4. So that's line 3, the first line of part B of our prayer.